I have something to confess, and I'm a little ashamed to confess it, but I'm going to because I think it's important for someone with my background and life experience to share it, because I do have an aspect of privilege, and I want to acknowledge that. The other night, I live in Phoenix, and the large protest, the biggest one so far, was walking right by our apartments, and there were so many people. It just kept going and going, and it was so inspiring that my boyfriend grabbed his camera, because he's a photographer anyways, so he has his camera all the time, and wanted to go down and take pictures. And of course I ran down there with him because it was gently sprinkling with big huge raindrops, and it was just this beautiful moment in Phoenix, and we wanted to capture it. Without giving it much thought, we ran downstairs, and we were catching up with this huge group because we were at the tail end, and as we caught up, we started to become involved in it. And I didn't plan it. We had both worked really long days. We were tired. We were already had our dinner and were ready to just kick back because it had been a long week of sleepless nights, especially since we could hear the other protests all week long, waking us up throughout the night. So the week was tough. But I have to tell you that on some level, probably there was some resistance because there's fear, right? You don't know what's going to happen, especially when there's so many people taking advantage of the situation. Opportunists to try to create chaos or take out some angst they have and use that as an excuse. And we didn't want to be involved or confused with that either. So sometimes you lay back a little just to kind of get a feel for what's actually going on and who's actually behind it, because you can never really know, especially when the media and all these other sources are giving you conflicting information all day, every day, and you have to tune out sometimes. But this is the biggest part I want to share with you, is when we were walking with the protesters, and Jim is taking pictures mostly, but he spent some time walking with me also. But I have to say that I had the hardest time saying any of the words that the leader was asking us to say. And the most difficult one for me was the say her name, Breonna Taylor. It's even hard for me to say now. I couldn't raise my voice to say her name. Why is that? I still am taking time to figure out why that is. Is it because I feel helpless? Is it because on some level I'm empathic and I feel other people's pain and I can't begin to imagine what it's like to be shot to death for laying in your home while somebody who's suspected of something is in custody, but the police are at your house anyway and they shoot you, and you're a good, law-abiding first responder just sleeping, laying in your bed? But you're in the wrong neighborhood? And yes, I understand that with this movement, there's a lot of other things to look at. There's a macro picture of how economics works in this country. There's so many rabbit holes you can go into as to why we are where we are. I'm only going to focus on the part that I know the most about from my education and my life experience. And my intention is not to undermine or insult or anything I say that might be misconstrued. I would hope that I would be educated compassionately on, because I do want to be corrected. I don't know other people's life experience and I don't want to speak for them, not even accidentally. But I feel shame still having a hard time saying the name of these people that this is happening to. And I can't even really explain why. But what I can tell you is that I was married to a first responder for years. And I know what they see and what they go through. So I have somewhat of an idea of what police go through also. And I'm not saying there aren't just bad people with bad agendas, and that there should not be some reform into how the police department works, how they're hired. They should go through some kind of law training. The little bit that happens for someone to become a police officer is ridiculous. There needs to be psych evaluations, and I could go on and on about how inadequate becoming what the needs are in order to become a police officer are, and I don't want to go down that road either. What I want to say though is, from my experience, I don't think, and with all the science and all the studies that have been done, and all of the trauma-informed practices, I don't understand how this isn't a requirement for police and first responders of constant trauma-informed training. What it's like to deal with people who are undergoing trauma, who are in poverty, and their minds are constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, and they're in survival mode. And you can't really reason with people that are in that mode anyway. And yes, there are criminals out there of all colors and races. And yes, that's not the only reason that crime happens. I am acknowledging that, but I'm saying if with the right training, someone would be able to determine the difference. And with the right screening, the wrong people wouldn't be able to have those jobs in the first place. I think that this, it's prevalent because there are resources for first responders to go to counseling and things like that, but they are ashamed if they want help. I would get phone calls from my husband in the night about seeing babies decapitated, and some of the stories he would tell me just because he needed to process them. And this is just one person's story over just a few years in a small town, no less. I can't begin to imagine what these people go through. And if you're dealing with violence every day and that's what your job is, you should have constant check-ins with someone that maybe isn't affiliated with the government, someone, maybe an outside contractor, something. We need to stop making men feel like they're less than because they are getting the support and help that they need to process things that no human was built to process. And maybe this stuff wouldn't be so prevalent to begin with. And yes, racism is a huge factor, and that's what the protest is about. And hate, that's a whole other topic. This constant seething hate for no reason. It's all related though. It's related to generational trauma. Hate is part of generational trauma. There's some reason that hate has been ingrained into a family, and it goes on and on and on, generation after generation. What are you avoiding? Why do you need that? And I just want to say that I think that it's important that men in general acknowledge when they need support and don't feel less than a man. And no one, not a coworker, not another man, not a woman, nobody should shame any other human being for acknowledging that they need to work through something and not push it down. One of my closest childhood friends that I've known since I was 3 is in the hospital with a stroke because he has spent his life pushing something down and trying to figure out ways to avoid pain, and wouldn't get help because I know on some level he thought it would make him less of a man if he got the counseling or whatever it was that he needed to heal and to work through it, because I know he had PTSD. But instead he's figured out other ways to try to avoid it and push it down until it exploded, and now he's trapped in his own body, the body and the mind that he was trying so hard to avoid. Now he's trapped there. And now the entire country is trapped inside of the mind of hate. And it makes me sick. And I'm going to say one last thing, because I am a spiritual person. I'm an oracle of sorts. I don't buy into the whole love and light washing everything. I believe in love and light, and I believe in reality and the darkness and how they are integrated, and they cannot be separated. They are part of one another. And when I was there and I said, I can't breathe loudly, that was the easiest thing for me to say, because I pictured every man like George Floyd who has yelled for help and nobody was listening. I wanted to be his voice. And I am in no way undermining my own intention by saying those words. I see a lot of light washing posts saying it's a mantra and your words have power and they have meaning. So if you say you can't breathe, then you're going to make that come true. Well, guess what? First of all, we do all die. And someday I'm not going to breathe. And that's okay. I'm not that afraid. I was most afraid of being in that protest. And then when I was in it, it was the most beautiful experience I've had in years. But I avoided it because it hurts me, because I know that I'm part of the people that are causing this. I take responsibility for it. So my intention when I said I can't breathe is more powerful than the words themselves, because my intention is I am the voice of and for George Floyd and all the George Floyds that are saying, I can't breathe. And to help his mother, because if that was my son and he was screaming it and there were people that I'd never met saying, I can't breathe, and being the voice of my son, that is the intention I'm putting into the universe. And I am not light washing that by saying I can't say it because I'm creating I can't breathe. No, what I'm doing is I'm amplifying the voice of people who actually can't breathe because they live a life every single day feeling like I did for a few minutes in a protest. Just for a few minutes, I felt it. And they live every day that way. And I can't possibly begin to imagine how they do it. So I hope that I'm just here to help us think about it. Don't light wash it. Don't think that your intention behind your words doesn't have meaning, because it does. If you're being the voice for someone else, and they are hurtful voices that need to be heard because it's trauma and it's pain, and you're helping an entire race feel heard, because it's the only thing you know what to do or how to do, then I think that's a good intention, and I'm not going to light wash that, and I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm not going to be afraid of being a voice for people in pain. And I hope that you won't either. Thanks for watching.